We gotta get. It has to be raw, right? The emotion has to be raw. Well, anyways, thank you so much for coming here, guys. Yeah. It's been a while. We wanted to do this back in July. It's been
That's
a
true.
long time coming. It's like
That's
a
true.
manifested a podcast.
Yeah, in fact, I think our WhatsApp coordination group is still called July.
It still is. It
But
still is.
anyway, here we are in December, and I think we've picked a good time and the right time to be talking about what we'll be talking about today.
Yeah, for sure. And right before we start, if you've seen Johannes here before, he's been in our podcast before. But Chris is a new face. Well, to you guys, he's a new face. And how about we get a quick introduction from the man himself?
Thank you for having me, guys. I know it's been quite some time since we played this live. So my name is Dave. I've been working with Johannes for quite some time. I've been collaborating with Adrian as well. He's a very good mentor for his younger peers. Me, I'm a practitioner in education, especially related to project management and business development. Well, sounds weird, but if we think about it, it's not a taboo anymore that education is a business. Bringing in the best teachers or attracting best talents out there to compete with other industries requires a lot of money. So part of my day-to-day jobs is managing how the organization works to provide best talents for younger people. And Adrian was one of them.
Ah, thank you for that nice compliment there. I saw what you did. Yes, for sure. I mean that again. These guys are pioneers in the industry, and they're doing great work. I myself am a student, as you all know, but we were introduced through that sector, through education. And I think that's how we know each other, and it's quite interesting to see how the three of us are all in different areas of that same industry. So it's definitely an interesting perspective to have on. And like Johannes mentioned in the beginning, we were supposed to do this in July, but we're doing it in December. And the topic of which we're going to discuss is kind of quite convenient in that way, in that sense. Maybe you can give us a little bit of light on that, Johannes, on what you meant by that.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, I think in our pre-discussions we were talking about using this opportunity to talk about New Year's resolutions in a broader sense, in the way that obviously New Year is around the corner, so that's coming up, and that is going to be very, very relevant for a lot of people, perhaps you guys as well, as I will find out later in this episode. But yeah, as someone who works as a health and performance coach, which I do outside of the line of work that Chris already mentioned that we're all in that field, it's just, this is just the time, right? This is where everyone's wanting to make change, and everyone thinks there's something magical about January 1st, where either the willpower that wasn't there for the last 12 months will suddenly appear, or some other motivation, some other drive will manifest itself and help you become someone, or do something that for whatever reason you didn't do the last 12 months or however many years you've been wanting to do that. And I don't want to sound like I'm immune to this, right? I too procrastinate on things that I tell myself I want to achieve. And maybe we can go into some of those as well. So this is what this is all about. I think we'll have a chat about what each of us have in mind for the new year, and maybe see where the conversation takes us from there.
Right. I mean, I know for a fact that for me itself, I generally don't keep New Year's resolutions because I'm a bit of a realist. I know I'm not going to end up doing any of that. So it's it's that concept. I mean, some people argue that the hope of you thinking you're going to do it is motivation enough. For instance, I know people who, I mean, it's kind of typical to say, right? They would go up and get a gym membership for an entire year. They will go up and pay the advance for the entire year. They'll be like, I'll do it for the entire year. It's not cheap. It's a big sum of money that these guys take per month. They'll do it. They'll show up for, okay, some people I know, they're quite, they listen to their own word. They go for a month. To me, a month is dedication enough. 30 days, it's not easy, but you put yourself in and bring yourself to go. But then afterwards, you're like, I'm a bit tired. Let me take a bit of a break. Let me take a bit of a break. And you end up in that break limbo for the rest of the year. And that's a cycle that keeps repeating itself, right? And so I see to myself, I'm not in the position to, financially put myself in that position. I don't want to, go to the gym and pay like $80 a month. But more than the financial side is a bit of discipline as well. I know I like that discipline. So why bother making this resolution in the first place?
That's an interesting take on it. How about you, Chris? Do you have any resolutions going forward, or did you have any this year, and how did they go, perhaps?
I'm still in the midst of finding out because I think even for the same person, resolution might work or might not, right? There are years where I keep track of my goals and it works. And some years, I'm living throughout 30 plus years, there are years that I've seen my goals motivate me, because I've started and I've seen myself fail in reaching it. So I guess we are here to listen to get insights from you guys as well about how can we make the goals that we set productive? How could we avoid the pitfalls of having a change taken guilt because we failed to achieve those? But I think generally it works for people and it works for some areas of life, right? We are not only talking about fitness and health. In general, the solution could be anything else. Financially, most people struggle to save money from their heavily earned salaries. Their savings are not as consistent as time goes by, unless they're wealthy, filthy rich like Adrian, I guess. But, you know, putting that logo on the chair like that, it costs money, right? So some people struggle to keep the same mental state, so I'd say, right? Because going to the gym is tangible, day to day you go there, you work out, but saving money is intangible in always, right? It's I'm not going to spend more than this amount of money this day, tomorrow, and next week, and so on. So yeah, I'm a success in some years, failed in some years, and I'm willing to listen about your insights.
Well, yeah, I think one thing that we can all share is like going back to the fact that we're all in the education sector, right? One thing that we're all taught, and I think we tend to, and I know for a fact that the school that we were from, we did that, and that's mainly smart targets, right? We talk about them quite a lot, and I feel like it's not implemented a lot in real life outside of that environment. I feel because okay, personally, if you ask me, the reason why I think typically these goals and resolutions we set, the reason they don't work is because they tend to over exaggerate our capabilities of achieving them. That is, that achievable aspect, it's not necessarily very achievable, or it's for a long period of time, right? If a target or a goal is for a long period of time, it's more likely not going to happen because you have less control of what's going to happen in between. Anything can happen in between. So maybe we should go into smart targets of setting goals, right? Chris, you were mentioning something about how like setting specific goals in some years worked for you. Maybe if you reflect on those goals that worked, were they potentially goals that were in a shorter measurable time frame or took less effort to achieve, or the range of which you measure them really? Because I think you can get down to that aspect, right? It could be really just how you create and form that goal, that target that you set.
Yeah, you speak like a corporate manager, You might sound like you're not saying, are you not in the army? Certainly, yes. I think what corporates and individuals do that succeed in a way is making their goals, their resolutions, their aspirations into things that motivate them in a sense. When you set it up, you're not setting yourself up to fail, right? Let's say
Yeah.
breaking it down to a time frame and an achievable. So let's say I'm going to I don't know, 3 kilograms in 2 months. Some might say it's a very small target, but some people might argue that it's achievable, hence worth pursuing, right? Or you can say, we will generate 3 billion in revenue by next end of year. Some companies might not be able to do that, and the employees will. This is not an achievable target. Why bother doing it in the very first place, right? So I guess it comes down to how can we make those goals motivate us instead of demotivate us. In a way, it's breaking it to dimensions that we can manage. Do you have any experience for yourself? Do you have any goals that you aspire aside from being a handsome army or something else? You can share about what were the goals that you set for yourself, and then do you break those goals down, Adrian?
Well, okay, so that's a good question, and the reason why I say that is because now, of course, I'm in university. That being said, it's not the same as high school, right? Obviously not. The structure is very, very different, and you're given this a lot of freedom. It's typically like you decide what you want to do, And if you don't do it, you pay the price for it. So yeah, I guess that's where it comes down to me breaking down things what I want to do and what I don't want to do. For instance, in this time frame that I have, this December holidays. Of course, I am a Catholic, so I do spend my Christmas with my family and my friends. But despite that, I also have a time frame of which I can use to do something that's more useful than just sitting down playing games. So I thought, you know what, let me do this. I have yes, they are. No, I will talk about this on a separate podcast. I definitely will talk about why games are useful. We can do that. But on a more serious note, I feel like, for instance, for me, I have a lot of work ahead of me because I mean, of course, studying is not that easy when you get to the higher educational level, but you have to follow certain targets and follow certain goals. If you don't do them, then you're kind of, there's a lot of discourse. It's so messy, it's confusing. You don't know what's going on. It's easy to get what do you call snowballed on you, right? Procrastination, like we mentioned in our previous podcast. I mean, it goes on to that. What I do is I use this app called Notion, right? I think you guys probably have heard of it. It's quite nice. See, it has a lot of these features where it gives you it's like a daily task bulletin you can put in for it. For me, I have each course, each module, I have this, I have that. But it's not just education, right? I also have responsibilities at home. I have things to do with my friends and my family. So you can put everything up on there and then be like, you know what, I'm going to prioritize this with this. Well, I want to do this first. You know what, this is not that important. I can afford to do it next week. Simple stuff like breaking it down to the priorities. I think that's the main thing that I tend to do with my goals. And I think goals don't have to be like certainly only a New Year's resolution. Because without New Year itself, like the idea of a new year is it's a psychological thing, right? It's like, oh, it's a new year. It's going to be different. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just another day, right? I mean, it's just the clock strikes 12 and it's just another day. But yeah, so I think Johannes, you're a bit excited about this. Maybe you can continue.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
You see me nodding along because that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is, right? And obviously, my focus or my emphasis is usually on health and fitness goals. But as you say, this applies to every goal or any goal, and there's literally nothing special about January 1st, right? It is just the next day that comes after December 31st, and there really is no rational or logical reason why, if you didn't have the willpower or the circumstances were not right to do something a week prior, why suddenly seeing a new year, a new number on the calendar, why that would make it in any way different, right? And I think that's really, really important for people to realize as a first step is, right, there's nothing special about it, right? If you really want to change now. What's today? I don't know, December 20. Change now, right? There's as good as January 1st. If for whatever reason you sleep half of January 1st, then start on January 2nd, right? It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you do start, right? And you're not only thinking and talking about it on the 31st, and by the 1st you've already forgotten it.
Yeah.
What matters is that you do start, and all the things you talked about, how to kind of break down goals, and Chris, what you mentioned, Adrian, you mentioned about making them smart, so specific and measurable and all these things. That's great. I think probably that's already one step where many people fail with their resolutions, because it's like, oh, this year I'm going to lose 20 kilos. How, by when, why? All these things are not considered at all, right? It's just like random number, this year it's going to happen. That's the first step, to kind of have a plan, have something measurable and specific that is in your sights, and then break it down, because when you break it down, you can get much smaller goals that you can actually achieve on a weekly or perhaps even on a daily basis, right? And this is one of the key things that I think most people don't see, or most people kind of get wrong in the sequence, is motivation doesn't lead to action. Action leads to motivation, right? You do something once, it's probably hard and it isn't fun. You do something again, A, it becomes easier. B, you start to see or feel a bit different. So that's what brings you the motivation to continue. Just to think that, oh, motivation will suddenly lead me to go to the gym 5 days a week. It might, but you'll probably not keep that going.
True. Motivation. Right. So Chris, what do you think about motivation? What motivates you? You're looking like, I feel like if you're giving some, typically everything motivates us. Something motivates us. Like you wake up in the morning, you want to be motivated to work because, well, I need money. Or if not, I'll probably be sleeping in the streets. But I mean, other than that, why are you making money? For your family, for your pet dog, whatever it is. What motivates you to create your New Year's resolution? Or perhaps is it the fact that you succeeded last year, so you're thinking, well, maybe this year I'll succeed too. So you continue that streak going on because you mentioned you had a few years it worked, a few years it didn't. So like, what was the difference there?
Yeah, I think it's how badly we want them to work, right? At points of life, we have multiple balls to juggle, right? We have different priorities in life, and we have only so much so little time. Sounds like a cliche, sounds like an excuse morally, but I think I'd like to highlight the motivation part. Right? It's hard for people to start. Hence, New Year, a date. That's why fitness industry thrives, because when some people have a difficulty on starting, the fitness industry milks it, right? The statistics of people signing up to classes is in January because it's the day where, it's the new beginning. This is when you start. I honestly think, despite the downside of people having that spike in the very beginning, imagine if they don't. Imagine if there is no start date, there is no milestone, there is no spike of people signing up to gyms. Well, people would have tried it out, right? Even though they failed, but it's a fact, right?
True.
What matters most, I think, to this one, is realizing that achieving our goals requires much more than just motivation, right? It's consistency, it's discipline, and that is, I think, what makes the difference between a successful goal and a repeated one next year, right? I know that there are some different strategies resulting around insurances that promotes their product more to the days when people receive their salary because it motivates people to, saving, subscribing to insurances for their own safety is a goal for some people, right? And some days makes it more effective because you have more money in the bank compared to other days, right? So if these
Yep.
industries are thinking that way ahead to milk us out of our resources, so to say, I think it's best for us to also think how we could make the most out of our own resources, right? So I subscribe to this annual subscription of gym. How can I stay? How could I keep going despite my motivation depleted in the February or in March? How could I still be able to fight all the urges to not complete my goals? I think that would be something to discuss. Maybe Johannes, with his willpower, could share things, one or two.
Willpower. I like the way you said that.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm being singled out on that. It's not like my willpower is superior to any of you, and I'm sure there are other
on the streets, right?
I'm sure there are many areas where you guys are more diligent and more willpowered and more disciplined than I am. It might be with your studies, it might be with, I don't know, some learning a musical instrument or something that I don't do or that I don't do well. Typically, this is a bit of a tangent, but for me, health and fitness, is, working out, staying in shape, and trying to be the healthiest that I can. These are things that come a bit easier to me simply because I'm really, really interested in them. And you will have other areas where you are more interested in, where you will find your motivation, so to say, comes much more naturally to you. And there isn't one is better than the other, right? I mean, of course, if your motivation is to, I don't know, play the maximum hours of video games, then maybe that isn't quite as beneficial to the long-term picture as if you were motivated to do something else. But inherently, neither is better than the other. And I want to kind of come back to action leads to motivation, right? You gotta start, and then the motivation will come. Or rather, then the motivation will be maintained, will be sustained. Because you might be super motivated on January 1st and still on the 2nd and maybe still on the 5th. But at some point that goes down, right? It either goes down because the friends that you go to the gym with stop going, or whatever it is, it goes down. And then you have to you better have ways for bringing your own motivation back up. That can take, well, that's very individual what shape that takes. And I kind of lost completely your question, but maybe we go back to Adrian.
Well, I mean, yeah, I feel like it is based on what drives us, and each person is different, of course. We all have our own intrinsic motivations. I can tell you for a fact that I know this is quite common for everyone, because as humans, we're designed to flock with the majority, right? That's if you were to go, let's say you're out in a country traveling, you don't know anything about that place, you don't have your phone. If you were to see two people walking on one street compared to, like, let's say 15 people walking on the other one, you'll probably follow the one with the 15 people, because that is our flocking mentality. Similarly, that's how FOMO works, right? The fear of missing out. If we're going to attack that concept of why January 1st is such a different idea, concept, even though we both agreed, you and I agreed that it is just another day. But if it can't be explained rationally, then it can't be explained emotionally then. So the emotional aspect to that is that, well, if everyone is doing it, why shouldn't I? Everyone thinks that Jan 1st is a special day. I mean, it is. It's a special day. Like Chris said, it's a beginning of something. It's a new year. It's the beginning of something. Yeah, emotionally speaking, correct. That's absolutely right. And so I think what people are doing, right, they're attaching that concept of new with goals. So their sense is, well, it's a new opportunity for me to do something that's different, because 2024 is different from 2025 because it's 1 year different. So, maybe this year I can do something different. And if everyone is putting up on their Twitter profile, on their Instagram profile, resolutions for 25, so you're going to be like, okay, let me put one myself. I'm going to read 50 books this year. How much did I actually read? Not even one. But, the concept is there. It's that someone else is doing it, so I'll do it. Yeah. And so that could be one of the potential intrinsic motivations to someone. But like Chris said, it doesn't have to be the only one that motivates you. Right? It could be the first one to get you a start, but you got to keep on pressing the pedal in the car to keep the car moving. Just pressing it once to accelerate is not going to keep it moving, right? So it's the same concept I think that we should consider. I mean, it's something that people should think about as well.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
really?
And I like that you mentioned intrinsic motivation, because I would almost argue that going by this date, this magic date, January 1st, is actually not intrinsic, it's extrinsic. Okay. It's someone, some society or whatever telling you that now is the good time to start. Whereas maybe, I don't know, maybe you went to the doctor on November 24th and he told you, you got to lose weight. Maybe that is a much better date to then start, right? Because that is motivation, or that is a reason linked to you, not to the calendar flipped.
Yeah, it's true. The doctor probably would not say, you know what, Jan 1st is a better day for you to lose your weight.
Yeah,
exactly. Probably say, bro, some weight. Yeah, no, it's true. And maybe I can change what I said in the sense that so perhaps what convinces people to take on that goal at the beginning of Jan is an extrinsic value, whereas the need to continue or the need to sustain that goal focuses on your intrinsic value itself, your intrinsic motivations. So then that's where it goes down to your support system. And I think that is the main one, right? Because not everyone is built to be alone. We're not creatures are meant to be alone. We need that care. Chris, I think we're entering a different topic. Well, we're here for you. But I mean, yes, we're not meant to be alone. So if you are, then I don't know. But if you
yeah, maybe Chris is Batman and we just didn't know.
Chris, no wonder. I've never seen him and Batman in the same room. Now that you mention it, it's true. So support system, we're not meant to be alone, right? So we're supposed to have some form of outside control. I mean, Johannes, you mentioned the fact that, one of the main reasons why people stop doing something, for instance, going to the gym, is because their friends stop going. So they have no reason to go. They're like, well, if my friend doesn't go, then why do I go? And I can tell you for a fact that I'm kind of the same, because a lot of times I don't have the need to go to the gym alone. But someone has to initiate it. I mean, one of my friends or two of my friends, they're like, yo, how about let's go to the gym tomorrow? You want to go? Then I'll be like, okay, let's go. 3 of us. That's support system for each one of us. Let's go. But I would never have done that on my own. And so that's something that's support system is very important. What do you think? Does it think it applies to all types of goals, or how?
I like it how you framed the sentence that way, because I think we established now that, whatever the goal is, some people have difficulties finding it. And we established, psychologically the external extrinsic motivation helps. That's why we need some dates, we need some reminders, we need from the doctor, some friends, etc. But you've mentioned as well that you would never have started it without your friends, right? So I think I believe in this sentence, we are an average of 5 people around us. So if our circle is a hard worker, if they are the hardest working people in the room, they're always those who study the hardest. Even though we are a potato, I believe we will be a potato, a buff potato. We will be one of these two. I think we could need, and I believe your listeners are mainly people who understand how to, they want to reach a certain aspiration of their lives. They know how to set targets. But I think what trips most people in resolutions is when those motivations, the external, the extrinsic ones depleted, how could I continue with only the intrinsic ones? So maybe a question for both of you, right? What do you think, or what are your experiences to help yourselves, avoid those guilt tripping, right? Because when you're so high in motivation, you failed once, I skipped the gym only once this week, and then in November, in March, I skipped 3 times, and then in April, I'm so guilt tripped that I missed more days than I'm coming to the gym. I feel like a failure. It's better for me to not come at all, right? What are your experiences in managing the guilt of not always being consistent to, create a new self?
That's a thinker.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, but you can probably never completely prevent or avoid it. But if you follow some of the strategies that we or that you guys talked about earlier, by making your goals very specific, very measurable, by understanding for yourself why this particular goal is important and why you want to achieve it, you already kind of set yourself the framework to, obviously not to guarantee that you don't fail, that you don't have any lapses, and then you get the guilt of not performing to the standard that you wanted to, but it makes the likelihood higher that you can follow what you set out. Because, and maybe this is the next step from having a smart goal, is to then actually break it down into smaller goals, so that you are almost regularly achieving a goal, right? It's not the end goal, but you're almost, I don't know, call it weekly or bi-weekly, monthly. You're checking a box, you're ticking, you're achieving. Yes, totally. Celebrate small wins. I mean, first of all, achieve small wins and then celebrate them. And really celebrate them, right? Don't just be like, okay, it's only 1 kilo and I still have 9 to go. Yeah.
True.
Be careful how you celebrate them. Don't undo your goal, undo your progress by celebrating it too hard. But in general, have a path where you can see the progress, and that helps. I think that can help you manage how you feel. And also, when you then do have a day or a week or whatever where you don't follow the plan, it's a little bit easier to come back, because your goal is actually quite small, right? It's like, okay, so this week I didn't go to the gym at all. So my goal for next week is the same. Let's go 3 times. And then you can much more easily reset, versus my goal is still the 10 kilos and I haven't achieved anything, or maybe even I've kind of undone the success that I've had. So now I'm a failure.
So there's a bit of that flexibility, right? And I feel like what you mentioned guilt tripping yourself, right? And I think it's true. I think we subconsciously do that sometimes. It happens to the best of us as well. But I often like to think to myself, right? There's a saying, of course, comparison is a thief of joy, right? And I know it might not sound like very relevant, but it's really relevant, because we tend to compare ourselves to other people who have similar goals and are achieving them at different paces. Sometimes it can be in a positive way by saying, this guy's kind of slow, I'm doing better than him. Which, I mean, I'm not saying it's good, but it kind of motivates us in that way. But it could be the other way. It could be that he's doing so much better than me and I'm still here. And that causes that guilt trip. that sense of comparison. That okay, no, I'm not doing as much as I can do.
Yeah.
And this is proven to be not good, especially if I was to put it in terms of gym terms, because you both would understand it much more clearly. Let's say I'm weight training. The guy next to me is doing 15 kgs, right, and I'm just here doing 5. But he doesn't know that I'm doing 20 reps of this, and he's doing 5 reps of that. So it's about you being consistent. Am I being like, so the guy's like, you're so weak, you're doing 5 kgs. Look at me, I'm doing 25. But he can do like 5. You only do 5 reps, but I can do 15 reps. And it's the concept of being like, okay, it's not about the size of the weight you're carrying, but it's about the value of each rep, right? It's how effective it is to you, because you're different from them. They're not you. So that sense of comparison, it shouldn't exist. I feel like if we can find a way to alleviate from comparison, keep ourselves a bit more humble in that sense that, you recognize that you're different. You recognize your abilities are different from others, and you work that with your smart target, then you're actually setting yourself up for success, because no one can steal your joy.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, to your point with the gym example, you don't know what the other person came from. Maybe he's been lifting 25 kilos for the last 10 years and hasn't made any progress.
Yeah.
And you've just started and you're now already on the 5 kilos coming from nothing. So maybe your progress is actually much, much better and much, much faster than his. So you wouldn't know that. And then just to add to that kind of comparison, the thief of all joy, social media obviously just makes everything so much worse.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not just comparing to that guy on the bench next to me. Now I'm comparing to the whole wide world. And everyone's lifting more than me, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at John Cena. I'm like, look at that guy. Look at what he's doing. And I'm here lifting 2 kgs. So, yeah, I mean, of course, you open yourself up to an environment such as the social media. I mean, now we're going into a different spiral, because you can argue that it's kind of how people market themselves. They put themselves up so high that that's how they get the money. It's because, and they're selling their products. They're like, yo, buy this whey protein, because I'm John Cena and I'm taking this whey protein. That's why I'm so buff and big. And you're like a small, normal guy, right? So if you buy this and then they sell their workout routine. But the thing again, I mean, you of all people know this. It's not like it's one template that everyone can use. Everyone has different bodies. Everyone has different medical conditions. It's not the same way for everyone. Each person has a different amount of protein intake they need to take. And you can't do that. But they do. And people still flock to them, like we mentioned before, the flocking mentality. You buy their products, marketing, and all that. So it's a very similar concept. And that's kind of also why a lot of companies, they tend to bandwagon on this New Year's resolution. They tend to be like, New Year's resolution, buy this new TV, start the year off right. And it works. People do it. It's kind of like that concept that we mentioned. It's that emotional sense, that psychological sense of doing something new this year. Smart target. I'm gonna earn a lot of money this year. I know I'm getting a raise next year. So let me celebrate early by buying a new TV. Something like this. That concept of celebrating early, but at the same time using social media, getting exposed to people who are, comparing themselves to them being paid off. And it's kind of like an interesting perspective to see. You have to humble yourself sometimes.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm interested to throw a bit of questions at both of you, because some questions is more fun than answering now.
Of course it is, Chris. You've been doing this for a long time. I'm seeing you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to resonate to what you said, Adrian, about comparison to people. Sometimes we also compare ourselves to what we ought to be, right? And I think that is the guilt tripping that people experience, in midst of June, July, when you let's say your goal is to read 12 books, right, a year. When you're in June, you've only managed to read 1. Some people have that mentality of comparing themselves. This year I should have read 6 by now, for me to read 12 by the end of the year, right? And I like the concept of atomic habit, in which if it's something that you like, you should aim for an incremental growth, right? If it's in June and it's only 1, don't overblame yourself. Keep reading. Maybe you get your second book by July, etc. But this is what I want still at top 1, with that mentality, with that same mentality, arguably, people would be okay and content with reading 3 books at the end of the year, right? You might say that it's better than reading just one, of course. But how important it is for you, do you feel, for those people who are able to, always be on the clock, on their gym, maintaining their habits, and they achieve 12 books a year? What do you think?
What do we think about them? Like their ability to achieve
What
that? Is that the question?
should I always be, in a sense, keep punishing myself or try to always scrape the motivations in order? It doesn't matter. I need to get 12 by the end of the year. No excuses, no contents, no living being content by only reading 4, even though 4 is better than 1. Right? Because some people argue that if you have that mentality of being content, you only achieve a small thing. Better
Yeah.
than achieving nothing, of course, but you will never be this great compared to all those people.
Okay.
Again, I'm comparing.
Yeah. I mean, again, and I think it's an interesting thing you mentioned because there are two extremes, right? There are some people. Okay, I feel like there's two types of people who live. The one person, and that tends to be the normal person, an average. They have very very normal life aspirations. They just want to just do a 9 to 5 job, just live the life, have a family, have kids, just live a simple life. And then there's another type of person who has a lot of aspirations, has big dreams, big achievements. They want to achieve, they want to do big things. There's nothing wrong with either of them. It's perfectly normal, perfectly respectable to live a normal life. And at the same time, it's also perfectly achievable and normal to have those big dreams and all that. So if you are content with just having small increments and you're happy with that, I don't see the need to compare yourself with someone who is doing so much better in terms of in their own, like you said, let's say they're doing 12 books a year and they're, at the gym every day. To them, they might never be content because they need to keep going on and on and on because that's their system. To them, maybe they're saying, well, I only read 12 books today. Next year, I make it 24. And then a year after that, I'm doing 32 onward, plus, and I keep going up and up. But you're like, hey, I like these 4 books. I'm happy. Next year, I'm going to read 5. You know what? And it's, again, comparison is a thief of joy. You mentioned this, and I can view my comparison differently to how you would view it, right? And maybe the fact that I look at someone, I don't want to name anyone specifically, but let's just say some public figure is doing something very good, right? And I understand. Yeah, let's just say they're doing something really nice, and I want to compare myself to that. I'm like, okay, yes, okay, that's good. They're doing that, but I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm happy with that, and that can also motivate you in some ways. I could be like, okay, they're doing their own thing, but you know what? I like what I'm doing. For instance, if I was to give a personal example for myself, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be this big YouTuber. These big, like with the big following, millions of subscribers. But making videos were a bit of a passion for me, and I did it for the fun of them, for the hobby. Once you get to that stage where you're recognized, it stops being a hobby and it starts being a job, right? Then you lose that sense of that feeling of that longing to do that things again. And that's something that to me, I'm like, I'm content with my 800 subscribers. I don't want 800,000 subscribers, even if I wanted to. And so it's that recognition of knowing where I am and knowing how content I am. And that's perfectly fine, right? I mean, no one's going to say anything wrong about that. So that's my answer to you, Chris. I think it all matters on where you stand. If you're content with something, why bother comparing yourself to someone who's doing something that's different to them? They could not be content. You never know, right?
Yeah, and I think to add or to kind of address your question as well, Chris, I think, is there a risk that if you set yourself a goal, and then you don't achieve that goal, and then in your mind you kind of reframe it and be like, oh, well, that was actually good enough? Is there a risk that you're going to be on a slippery slope where suddenly your goals get lower and lower and lower? Maybe there is, right? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I think people usually overestimate how much they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years or in a lifetime, right? If you only read, I'm going to say only, but actually it's probably more than a lot of people do, but if you only read 4 books a year, that's still going to be 40 in 10 years. That's still going to be a couple of hundred over your lifetime. That's a lot more than many people ever read, I would assume. And the same with health goals, with fitness. If you only go to the gym once a week, But if you're consistent with that, that's 52 sessions in a year. That's probably also a lot more than most people do. Of course, there's perhaps a bit of a risk of kind of lowering your own benchmark and lowering your standards by always accepting, I didn't meet my goal, I met half of it, and I'm fine with that. Next year, already your goal is lower, and you only meet half of it. Of course, there's that risk, but I don't know how much of a problem that necessarily is, because you're still progressing. Maybe slower, but you're still progressing.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's a perfect way of saying it. Yeah, it's a marathon on us. We all go at different paces, comfortable paces. I think we should stick to that. But I think the most important fact that I think we should all consider, and I think this is a good way to end the session, I think, is about not about how fast you're going or following someone else's pace. It's about finding your own pace, right? You know, going through that journey to recognize how fast you want to go and how you want to get there. It's a process, and no one's going to judge you for how long you take to do it or whether you take to find it or not. I mean, it's a part of the process. Be that Jan 1st or be it tomorrow, December 20th. It doesn't make a difference. What it second makes the day makes this difference is the day that you decide to do it. And so, if you decide to make a difference, make a change, go for it. No one's stopping you.
Love it. Perfect. Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better. I think let's leave people with that.
Yes, we can let it sit, let it rest, let the dish rest. And I think, and once again, thank you so much, Johannes and Chris, for coming in today. We've been trying to do this for months on end. Finally, we got a chance to do it, and I think it's been a fruitful session. Definitely, a lot of people will benefit a lot and take away quite a lot of insightful things we've talked today. And I think Chris is you should be the moderator next time, because you ask a lot of questions, putting us in spots. You know, you're a sneaky little individual, I have to admit, sneaky guy. Yeah, so definitely, we'll definitely have Chris over in another podcast as well. This is Johannes' second time. We should even it out with Chris having another one. So we'll definitely do that. Yeah, of course. Then, in that case, I guess, bye-bye then.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Chris. Great to catch you all.
All right, guys, take care.